You know, in July, just for the month of July, I'm going to go away and listen to God, because I feel like He has something to tell all of us, and I feel like there's a part that I can play that I really need to listen to in a sustained way. I'm not leaving town, I'm staying here, but I've got to take some time off preaching in order to really listen to Him. There have been 3 times in the history of this church that I've been called away. And each time, God has reshaped this church in a major way. The first time was in 1988. And I felt like God had a message for the church, but as a pastor, you just respond to everything that's thrown at you. So I was doing that, and I just felt like I had got on. Back then, it was call waiting. Some of you aren't familiar with that term, but back then we would call it call waiting. And every time I thought I started listening to God, I put Him on hold because I had to go out pastor. Finally, I came to the elders, and they said, "Go away." They said, "You go away, you listen to God, and don't you dare come back unless you've heard from Him. Don't you come back to us until you have heard what He wants you to say to us." So I literally went away on a mountain, Vail, Colorado, never forgot. And God spoke to me as clearly, and I came back, and one of the things He said to me was, pastors today try to hop all over the place when they're preaching. I don't care how much information you give your people, unless it changes their lives, it doesn't count. So stay on a subject as long as it will take to actually change the character of the people you're preaching to. And in 1989, we switched to the 10-year journey. 10-year journey, remember that? For those of you who were here, we preached on one topic for an entire year. And during that year, we went from a congregation of 400 in attendance to a congregation of over 6,000 in attendance. Do you know why? Because people could see the difference in our character. And they wanted that. And they came in droves. Second time I was sent away. God was trying to say, you've got to make a decision about your church. Because what happens when you get a big church? You have to make a choice. You can either take pride in the big church and you start attracting everybody. Same principle is true in physics. The greater the mass, the greater the gravity. And so anytime you have anything big, it's going to have a natural tendency to draw all people to itself. That's what a big church does. I just want more people. I want more resources. I want more. And God was saying, no. The church isn't about how many it can seat. The church is about how many it can send. I came down for the world. God so loved the whole world, not just the church. This isn't about you. This is about who I'm making you for them. And so therefore, I want a church that's distributed. And that's when we changed our name from Northern Community Church to Northern, a church distributed. Because it's not about just what happens in here. It's about what happens out there to people who will never make it in here. And so that's what, when God, and I wrote that in a book, and major change. Now we've had a gestation period of that thing, right theology, for about 15 years. And last July, I went away, and I was so exhausted. I didn't even know if I should still be in ministry. I said nothing left. And the elder said, you need to go away. And you need to listen. And I came back. And God said, okay, I want you to go from the grand to the granular. Because the only way that church distributed thing is really going to happen is if you make disciples of all your people. If they know how to follow Christ, and they know how to help someone else follow Christ. And then they gather up into churches that don't just gather into a church building, they gather wherever there are Christians. And then other churches get planted from those churches, and so on and so forth. And so for the past year, there's been a remarkable change in this ministry. I won't even go into all, because that's not what I kind of preach about. But I need to go away one more time and just listen, because there are certain principles that we need to have anchored so that all of you, if I clarify my rule, you'll clarify your rule, because y'all got a role here. So, but the point is, it's always about them. God, I am, us, for them, there. That's our motto here. All right?